The following is a presentation of the Pro Wrestling Report. Television, radio, internet, the world. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Pro Wrestling Report. We're live here on 540 ESPN, streaming live on ESPNMilwaukee.com. Milwaukee, the place that Vince McMahon made famous tonight. Mr. McMahon returning to WWE Raw at Milwaukee's Bradley Center. That episode of Raw going off the air just a little while ago. David Harrow and the Cause still down at the Bradley Center. I, of course, being the responsible person that I am, decided to come on over here to the studio to ensure that the Pro Wrestling Report got off and crack-a-lackin'. Damian Nelson here with the Pro Wrestling Report, here live Monday night, February 7, 2011. The Green Bay Packers are the Super Bowl champions. The Green Bay Packers are the Super Bowl champions. I know you've heard a lot of that, but it was awesome being in Dallas as part of that. Part of those festivities just last week, or just last night, rather, getting back to enjoying WWE Raw today from Milwaukee's Bradley Center. Going to be in Green Bay tomorrow night for a SmackDown taping, and that should be fun as well, especially with that big event going on at Lambeau Field tomorrow afternoon. A lot to talk about here tonight. We're going to give you some additional information on that interview we did with Kevin Nash. We're going to start off with some news items as it pertains to that, because then we need to talk about the They reveal from last Thursday night in Impact on TNA. There's a lot of discussion about this 2/21/11. A lot of discussion about who that will be, who that may be. We're going to discuss what we know about that as well, and a new broadcast member on the SmackDown broadcast team. Where did Stryker go? And oh yes, I can dig it, sucka. Again, this is the Pro Wrestling Report on 540 ESPN. We're streaming live at ESPNMilwaukee.com. Let's first talk about the big Kevin Nash interview of last week. I want to thank all of you for tuning in and listening. Actually, it's the most downloaded full episode ever on Blog Talk Radio. We appreciate all of our new listeners on Blog Talk Radio, and make sure that you follow the show and favorite the show so you never miss those opportunities again. Kevin Nash, a great guest to have had on, along with our other guests, Greg Helms last week, Shane Helms last week. So much discussed and so much talked about. But we've learned some things since that interview that are certainly noteworthy. Specifically, Dixie Carter indicating that Kevin Nash had indeed signed a contract with TNA Wrestling in January. Or late last year or January. Kevin Nash supporting that claim that he had indeed signed a contract with TNA Wrestling, but decided to get out of it. Now, this is interesting because obviously Kevin Nash was part of the Royal Rumble just last weekend. A big surprise return to WWE. But Kevin Nash had signed a TNA contract. Dixie Carter letting Kevin Nash out of that contract. Kevin Nash saying all along he had not signed a TNA contract. As you know, that information did get leaked out and was reported by some sites that Kevin had signed a contract. Kevin told everyone who has a direct line to him, including us, that he had not signed a TNA contract. So a bit of controversy there, but finding out from both of them now confirming that at a time they did sign a new contract for Nash to return. Now, Nash saying recently that he watched an episode of Impact, saw several segments, specifically when Abyss got, quote-unquote, killed with the Janus, the stick in his back, and decided that TNA wasn't the place for him. The go-between of what happened between those two times, the signing of the contract and Nash being released, or Nash being let out of his contract, we don't know what happened in that interim, but apparently a similar situation occurring with Booker T as well. So, regardless of all that, TNA had announced that they were going to be returning, and it was wildly rumored that they were going to be the Main Event Mafia. Pretty much looking at what they had done, which was with Scott Steiner coming back in the suit, a little bit of involvement there by Kurt Angle, it became somewhat obvious that they were going to be bringing back the Main Event Mafia. Well, last Thursday on Impact, we would find out that is not the case, and a lot of people saying that TNA has been scrambling. TNA has been trying to figure out what they were going to do ever since both Nash and Booker T decided to go back to WWE. Now, you heard Eric Bischoff talk about Nash, Sting, and Booker T at the beginning of Impact last week, basically saying that it was their choice to go and ride off into the sunset, if you will. Whether that's true or not, or whether that's the actual case or not, is not as relevant as who they ended up being. And it indeed was Fortune. So they are revealed to be Fortune. AJ Styles saying to Eric Bischoff, you put $1 million company out of business once. We're not going to let you do it here to TNA. We're not going to let you do it here. What you did to WCW. AJ Styles joined by Beer Money and Kazarian. Fortune, group originally put together by Ric Flair. Fortune is they. So now you got the Immortals and you got they in TNA. You got Ken Anderson with the TNA Championship. And it looks as if we're going to see that matchup next week. Next week on the Impact. I'm sorry, it's a lot going on here. I'm following our Twitter feed. Lots of feedback and discussion on tonight's Raw and Vince McMahon's return to WWE television. A big show from Milwaukee as well here tonight. It's always good stuff happening down at the Bradley Center. Always very good. But they revealed to be Fortune. I like it. David Hero said this. I was talking to him over the course of this week, and he said, this actually worked out for TNA because TNA gets to now play with their own toys. And what that means is, look at who Fortune is. Look at who this big reveal was. TNA's ratings for Impact have been on a steady climb for the last several weeks. There's intrigue in the product, or the Blizzards have kept people inside their homes a little more. Either way, that's a good sign for TNA. And they did so without a lot of these people that they had been treating as mainstays and treating as drivers of their storylines for the last few months. They haven't needed that. Hogan hasn't been on air. Ric Flair wasn't on this past Thursday's Impact. Of course, they've added names such as Matt Hardy. Jeff Hardy obviously added too, RVD. Tommy Dreamer hasn't been on TV in a while. One thing TNA got a lot of criticism for was its dependence on these quote-unquote old stars, these quote-unquote over 40-year-old stars. Well, when you really look at the product right now and what they're doing right now, that's not the case. They used a lot of those stars to gain awareness, not only for the company, and you could argue whether or not that's been successful, but to gain awareness for a lot of the younger stars, that you now see in the forefront. Look at Fortune. That's a home-built team. Those are TNA originals. It makes a lot of sense. Whether this was the plan or not, and many say that the plan was for the Main Event Mafia to come back and then eventually, down the road, maybe 2 to 3 months from now, Fortune would have peeled off and become a group of their own again anyways. But regardless, I think that this was a good challenge for TNA to overcome, and a challenge that they did overcome very, very successfely with this reveal of they. I, for one, am intrigued. I want to see what's going to happen next week on Impact. I haven't read the spoilers yet. But we're going to see what happens next week on Impact and see where this goes and what's going to happen when Hulk Hogan does return. When Hogan does come back and has a lot to clean up, including this situation with him and Dixie Carter and Dallas. So that's the reveal of they. A lot of people very, very impressed on our Twitter feed. And remember, our name on Twitter is @PWR Show. We're at PWR Show on Twitter, so if you haven't checked that out, be sure to do so and interact with us. And we've got a Versus that we're going to be doing tonight as well, because we do take your Versus comments, # Versus. So go ahead and send those to us via Twitter. Put # Versus and your old star of yesterday versus a star of today for a fantasy matchup. We want those stars to be similarly matched so that we can go ahead and tell you what we think would happen in a matchup between those two competitors. As I said, many of you very, very satisfied with what happened with TNA and with they. And the question that's sort of still out there is, what's going to happen with Sting? Is Sting going to be going to WWE, a place where he hasn't been? What's going to happen with they? What's their motivation? And I think we got a bit of that this past Thursday night on Impact. But again, your feedback has been solid as it pertains to that reveal last week. And one other thing I want to cover. As we talk about last week, we talked about the Super Bowl last night. There was a lot of people talking about Aaron Rodgers displaying that World Heavyweight Championship belt, holding that belt over his shoulder in Cowboy Stadium after winning the Super Bowl for the Green Bay Packers last night. And that, of course, that means that the World Championship is more important than the WWE Championship. Listen, firstly, all of you out there in the universe, in the world, in the kingdom, in the IWC, selected via a poll and via voting and indicated that the WWE Championship was more important to WWE than the World Heavyweight Championship was. I never said that the World Heavyweight Championship was not more important or as important than the WWE title. I said that the WWE Championship was the more important championship to WWE. Now, there is no way, there is no chance in hell that Aaron Rodgers would have had the WWE Championship available to him to use at the Super Bowl last night to hold up and proclaim his victory because of that huge WWE logo right in the front. 170 some odd million people. Some are saying it's the most watched TV show of all time. 163 million total viewers. They weren't going to put that out in front of them, giving WWE free press, free props. That's why they use the World Heavyweight Championship. It changes nothing. Think, people, it changes nothing. The World Heavyweight Championship has the lineage, has the support, has the history, but to WWE, the WWE Championship is much, much more important. So, regardless of all that, it was still great to see that belt being held high with the confetti in the background and Aaron Rodgers, a man who proved himself to the world at the Super Bowl last night. And, it just really tells you think about how ironic it is. You've got the Super Bowl, and coming up in a few months, you've got WrestleMania, the Super Bowl of professional wrestling, and the event's now somewhat tied together due to this inclusion of a wrestling title at the Super Bowl. WWE certainly taking advantage of that opportunity, especially since emails went out today indicating that it was the last chance to get 15% off your championship belt. So waiting for Dave and Frank to get here so we can get their information, and it looks like they're not going to make it. They're out partying. Looks like of course, the Kaz is out partying with Linda, Gail Kim, Alicia Fox, and Natalia. Oh, really? Of course. Why wouldn't they be? I'm here doing the job that a host of the year would do, the king of wrestling radio, and they're all out having fun. That's just fine. I'd rather be here with you all, our great fans, listening here live on a Monday night, February 7th, 2011. I want to remind you as well, we did just get the opportunity to release some additional seats, some additional tickets for the Pro Wrestling Report Sweet and Sexy ticket package at WrestleMania 27 in the Georgia Dome in Atlanta. Go to pwrshow.com, our website, pwrshow.com. Only a few tickets were released. Only a few tickets were released to be a part of WrestleMania 27 and watch it from the suite with the Pro Wrestling Report broadcast team, including Linda Kay. She's the sexy of the sweet and sexy, Again, only a few tickets remain for that, and it is the ultimate fan experience, and it's being brought to you exclusively by the Pro Wrestling Report. Still to come, we're going to talk about this whole 221-11 thing. What's it going to be? Who's it going to be? Booker T debuts on SmackDown, and so much more. We are going to also be taking your submissions for Versus, #Versus on Twitter. Our name on Twitter is at PWR Show. A star of yesterday and a star of today. Put them together, two similarly matched stars, and we'll talk about how that match may or may not go. You're listening to the award-winning Pro Wrestling Report. We're broadcasting live on 540 ESPN. We're streaming live on ESPNMilwaukee.com. Welcome back to the award-winning Pro Wrestling Report on 540 ESPN, streaming live at espnmilwaukee.com, pwrshow.com, and on Blog Talk Radio. Damian Nelson coming here from the beautiful downtown Milwaukee studios of 540 ESPN. Riding solo tonight. David Hero and the Cause have ditched me. They had the show last week as I was in Dallas, and now they're partying out with some of the WWE divas here in Milwaukee. As you know, Raw was on the air tonight in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. A lot of discussion has been going on about those 221:11 promos. We're going to get to that in a few minutes as to what those might mean. But we are taking your submissions for tonight's Versus segment. Just go ahead and send us a tweet via our Twitter name, which is at PWR Show, and use the hashtag Versus. And let us know who you want to see, who you would want to see in a fantasy matchup, a star of yesterday versus a star of today. Coming up in the second hour, we're going to bring you more highlights and features from that interview last week with Kevin Nash. If you haven't heard that yet, it is one you certainly want to check out. Kevin Nash on the Pro Wrestling Report. It is something that you certainly want to check out, and we're going to give you the opportunity to do that in the second hour here tonight. We talked about Dixie Carter in our comments about Kevin Nash and Kevin Nash's status with TNA Wrestling in a recent interview that she had done. Well, she's also been answering some questions via Twitter and Facebook. And let's talk about some of those questions that she's answered and talk about things a little more in-depth, or at least from the way I see them here. First question that she answered, which was, and you can find these all at pwrshow.com, do you plan on moving the Impact Zone to somewhere else? I believe that keeping it in the Universal is crippling the audience numbers. That was a question from a fan to Dixie. Dixie's response was, there are no plans to move the production to another single facility. However, we are excited about taking Impact on the road to Fayetteville, North Carolina on February 24th and hope to do more Impact tapings from different locations in the future. This is something we've talked about for quite a while. It's something that TNA can't just get up and do. I would imagine that they have an agreement and a deal and something signed with Universal where there is, obviously reciprocal agreement there. Universal getting paid and the guaranteed audience being provided by TNA. Keep in mind, they've been there for, I think, the last 4 years or so now. So you can't blame the audience for being stale, but in theory, they're rolling over the audience each and every week. It's the same thing Worldwide did. WCW Worldwide, and I believe WCW Saturday Night was taped from a television studio facility as well. So it's not untested waters, not something that hasn't been done before, but it's something that is, I think, substantially impacting the product at times of TNA wrestling. There are only so many hardcore TNA fans in Orlando, Florida, and I don't think in today's day and age you can expect that people in that area or in any area of the country are going to go down to see weekly wrestling. And that's really the way things were back when some of those other programs were a bit more strong in their areas. Let's see how this thing goes on February 24th. I think there's a lot of value in TNA taking Impact on the road. I know there's a lot of interest in the product. I know that there is a very loyal fan base that will certainly contribute to a better overall show for TNA and Impact being in front of that live crowd that's not in Universal Studios. Another question that Dixie Carter answered, which was, what has been the biggest mistake you've made so far running TNA? And the questioner going on to say, I know the list is long, but narrow it to one if possible. Dixie Carter answers this way. The move to Monday nights. We have a loyal audience on Thursdays, and that move proved that. Even the ratings of the Thursday replay, which did not force viewers to watch on Monday, were as high or higher than the debut telecast. And that's the key there. The Monday Night Wars certainly worked, but and the Monday Night Wars were created by, a man named Eric Bischoff and a man named Ted Turner. And the times were very different at that time in professional wrestling. And obviously, the TNA just did not have the power, did not have the machine, did not have the ability to go head-to-head with WWE. And Dixie Carter admitting that, saying that the biggest mistake so far in all of the time she's run TNA has been the move to Monday nights. Another question Dixie Carter was asked and answered via her Facebook and Twitter page. Can you tell me how you felt when you saw Booker T and Kevin Nash at the Royal Rumble and realized your original plans for they were screwed. Dixie said this, and I alluded to these comments earlier. Booker was not available for any main event Mafia angle. Kevin Nash was under contract with TNA and was just recently released for reasons I will not disclose. From the beginning, if we did do a main event Mafia angle, it would not have been with the original group, and it would have been a short-term story to get to something else. To see they, tune in tonight, this was done on Thursday, and Dixie saying that I'm pretty sure the fans will be happy, and I know I am. So we talked extensively about that in the first segment. No need to discuss that further. What's the truth about the rumors that Sting has left TNA and joined WWE is the final question asked of Dixie Carter in this interview. Dixie responds, I have read these reports. I would really hate to see that happen. That's basically a no comment. And that's a substantial comment, I think, given what she didn't say. Because the question was, what's the truth about the rumors that Sting has left TNA and joined WWE? Dixie saying, I have read these reports. I would really hate to see that happen. Either Dixie knows something we don't know, or she doesn't know anything about what Sting's intentions are. And that's right where Sting wants to be. We've talked about this so much on this program. How much sense does it make for Sting to go back to TNA wrestling? How much? I don't see much value in it at all. Sting has done most everything he needs to do there. But what he hasn't done is he hasn't been in World Wrestling Entertainment. What he hasn't done is he hasn't been on WrestleMania. What he hasn't done is he hasn't gone into the WWE Hall of Fame. Sting has opportunity. Sting has a ton of opportunity. And that opportunity could be happening later this month. We've talked about it. You've seen it. A lot of buzz created last week. 2/21/11. 2/21/11. Is it Sting? Is it Sting? Or is it the return of The Undertaker? Or is it somebody else? The speculation is running wild. We won't know until Fresno, California. We won't know until that particular episode of Raw. But what we do know is that it could indeed be Sting. Why not? Picture it. WrestleMania Atlanta from the PWR suite. The Undertaker. The Undertaker versus a man called Sting. Guys, as you pointed out, we've been talking about this since late last year. This is not a new concept. This is a concept that's money for WWE. And right now, what's the main event at WrestleMania? What is it? What's your big headlining match at WrestleMania? Is it Del Rio versus Edge? Absolutely not. Is it CM Punk versus John Cena? Absolutely not. Is it The Miz versus John Cena? Absolutely not. Is it The Undertaker versus Wade Barrett? Absolutely not. Last year, what was that match? That match was Vince McMahon, Bret Hart. WrestleMania 18, what was that match? That match was The Rock versus Hulk Hogan. What's the marquee? What's the main event? What's the headline? Sting versus Undertaker is that match. Sting Taker is that match. WWE, of course, there's been a lot of talk about the efforts to get a Brock Lesnar involved in WrestleMania, to get a UFC involvement at WrestleMania. There's been talk of Justin Bieber appearing and performing at WrestleMania, which would be interesting. Great for WWE, by the way. Don't knock them for it. It's brilliant on their part. Absolute brilliance. Because of all the buzz that would be generated, they would have a little bit of work to do with the dubbing out of all the boos that the 70,000 plus in the Georgia Dome would give him. But be that as it may, they need that marquee matchup. We know The Undertaker's advertised to return on that same show, February 21st, just a couple weeks from now. We know that. Now, the card's always subject to change without notice. We know that Triple H is advertised in Main Events Wrestling on the events leading up to WrestleMania. We know that. What we don't know is who's going to be coming into or returning to WWE on February 21st. What we don't know is what that money match is at WrestleMania. What we do know is WWE has offered the money matchup from last night. The leader of that, Aaron Rodgers, Green Bay quarterback Aaron Rodgers, to SmackDown on Tuesday night in Green Bay. There's a lot we need to figure out, a lot WWE needs to figure out, and we'll see what happens. But we're going to discuss this and so much more in much more detail when we come back. This is the award-winning Pro Wrestling Report. We are live right after WWE Raw, February 7th, 2011. On ESPNMilwaukee.com and 540 ESPN. Welcome back to the award-winning Pro Wrestling Report on 540 ESPN and ESPNMilwaukee.com. And I want to give a shout-out to the Wrestling Radio Awards over at AudioWrestling.com, WrestlingRadioAwards.com. Very great edition of the Wrestling Radio Awards broadcast just before the Royal Rumble last Sunday, and the Al Snow. An interview that we did with Al Snow, winning Media Interview of the Year, and I was very, very honored to have won the distinction of being the Wrestling Radio Host of the Year. It means a lot, and I appreciate all of your support out there for making that happen and making me a hottie. Well, I already was, but now it's official. Host of the Year, the king of wrestling media. All hail, King Nelson. I like that. I can have Linda singing it. It's all clicking now. Thanks for joining us, ladies and gentlemen. We're coming off the heels of WWE Raw here in Milwaukee, the Bradley Center. Matter of fact, we are deliberately not talking about the goings-ons of Raw tonight because we're going to be talking about them in-depthly. I want to get David's opinion as well on some things that happened. We didn't get a chance to talk much after the program on this week's Primetime. Primetime TV returning this week. We're going to be doing Be the Booker for TNA's Against All Odds pay-per-view. By the way, you're going to find out the main event, I guess, for that on Thursday. However, it was revealed by TNA that championship matchup at Against All Odds will be a ladder match. The champion, Mr. Anderson, is going to be taking on either Matt Morgan or Jeff Hardy, as the two of them have a match on this Thursday's Impact to determine who will go on to Against All Odds. We're going to be doing that Be the Booker segment on Primetime Friday. Other matches that we know of so far, Jeff Jarrett versus Kurt Angle, Samoa Joe taking on the Pope, D'Angelo De Niro. It's Bully Ray versus Brother Devon in a street fight. Madison Rayne versus Mickie James in a last knockout standing match. And there'll be a number one contenders matchup for the X Division Championship. All that at Against All Odds on pay-per-view from TNA Wrestling this Sunday night. Be the Booker returns to PWR Primetime TV this Friday night on demand. And of course, here in southeastern Wisconsin, it's on right after WWE SmackDown on Time Warner Cable, Channel 14. We've been talking about Sting, a lot of TNA stuff tonight. And we're going to move on and talk a little WWE. As you saw last Friday night on SmackDown, Booker T returning on a more long-term basis to World Wrestling Entertainment. Booker T is the new color analyst over on the SmackDown side of things. Can't say I would have expected that. WWE did an extensive interview with Booker T and discussed that. As you know, Booker T returned to WWE at the Royal Rumble after being last seen in TNA Wrestling. Jim Ross had some comments. Obviously, Jim Ross, the former primary play-by-play man for WWE. And Jim Ross saying this on his website, jrsbarbecue.com, and I quote, "Nice work by Booker T on his first outing on Friday Night SmackDown at the announce desk. Booker will advance even farther when or if the SmackDown announce team is perhaps Booker and Josh Matthews, who has improved more than any WWE announcer, in my opinion, over the past year or so." Josh Matthews is, there's actually a very loose connection between Matthews and the Pro Wrestling Report. Back in the late 90s, early 2000s, we had a co-host, Marty DeRosa, who was excellent at what he did and filling in as host for this program on quite a few occasions. One of his best friends was Josh Matthews from the Indiana area, and we had the privilege later on of meeting Josh after his WXF days and Tough Enough days. And Josh, a great guy, and Josh, a man who has really done a great job in falling into that role of the play-by-play or color analyst on many programs for WWE, especially in a day where Michael Cole is getting a bit played, to be honest with you, with his borderline schizophrenic style of announcing that he's been thrown into as of late. Having Josh Matthews be able to be a bit more of an analyst is refreshing, and as Jim Ross said, him and Booker T working together could be fun. Now, I'm a big fan of King Booker. Maybe at some point we shall all hail again. But what's entertaining about this is that Stevie Ray, Booker T's brother, over on the WCW side of things, was doing commentary as well at the end. And it's a good gig. How much longer is Jerry Lawler going to be doing it? They got to fill in and get people into those roles that can do them more long term. They got to look for the future. You don't become a great broadcaster in a day. You don't become a great broadcaster in a few days. Look how long it took for JR to get the respect of being one of the best play-by-play men in the history of the business. Look at how long it took Monsoon and Heenan working together, McMahon and Ventura working together, Schiavone and Madden working together. Anyway, Don West and Mike Tenay working together. Look how long it took for all that to happen. It takes time for people to get to know each other, for that chemistry to build, for that dynamic to build, and for the timing to be just right. So very good move for WWE. I don't know what this means for Matt Stryker, by the way. I have no idea what this means for Matt Stryker. Would love to see him still involved in broadcasting. Of course, you've got NXT going on, and you're going to need, in addition to your coaches for Tough Enough, who are Stone Cold Steve Austin and Booker T at this point, you're going to need a host for Tough Enough, and I would imagine seeing Stryker go into a role for that because he's done very well with NXT. But, Matt Stryker is one of those people who at his core wants to be calling professional wrestling matchups, and we'll see what happens with that. But Booker T on the new broadcaster, color commentator on WWE SmackDown. We're talking about JR's comments. There have been a lot of rumors and reports out there about Ric Flair being injured and Ric Flair needing some surgery on his rotator cuff after taking some bumps overseas. Jim Ross said this about Ric Flair. Ric Flair, and I quote, "Ric Flair called me last week at the time he wasn't sure if he needed rotator cuff surgery imminently or not. He's had similar shoulder problems in the past, and Rick was trying to help me find Super Bowl 45 tickets. We're trying to get hooked up with the linebacker coach for the Green Bay Packers and former wrestler Kevin Green. We missed 2 regularly priced tickets by this much. But anyways, keeps on going. And there's a little bit of confirmation that Ric Flair is suffering from an injury. You didn't see him on Impact this week. He wasn't able to make the tapings. And, Kevin Nash, you'll hear him later on. If you didn't hear it last week, you'll hear him talk about that whole situation overseas with Ric Flair and what that, what could have led to that and how that all developed and the way it should have been handled, at least from Nash's perspective. But Ric Flair, certainly a benefit to TNA Wrestling. And, there are all these reports swirling around out there. Again, unconfirmed reports, non-verified reports, at least by us, that Ric Flair's owed a considerable amount of money, back pay for his time and his contract with TNA Wrestling, and that led into some of the challenges that were had overseas. Now, the version of the story we get and we have heard from people who were there is that has nothing at all to do with it. It was actually a longer story, and much like many of these situations, there was some mishandling on both ends of it. But at the end of the day, whether or not Ric Flair is owed money by TNA Wrestling or not is a different story. Now, one thing I'd look at is, regardless of whether you agree with it or not, and regardless of who made the decision or not, TNA deciding to allow Kevin Nash to get out of his contract and to not re-signing Booker T and going in a different direction with this main event mafia thing should free up some funds for some other talents. Should free up some funds to take the Impact on the road more. Should free up some funds to do some of the things that the company drastically needs to do. And we'll see maybe what we can see about that starting this Sunday night after the Against All Odds pay-per-view. I got to say one challenge about Impact last week. Very few people got a ring entrance. And if you just think about this for a minute, step back. If you want to create an identity for somebody and get somebody, as you'll say, over, you got to give them that larger-than-life persona. You've got to give them that huge entrance. Think of the signature entrances in WWE. Granted, different company, bigger budget, more production techniques and abilities. Kane, Undertaker, Triple H. John Morrison even has an entrance that's larger than life. It's not just the music. You can't just keep coming back from commercial and have these guys in the ring, have them just standing there, have them just, sort of be in there already, and you're supposed to assume who they are. You know those erase the hate things that TNA is doing? They should be doing identity spots. They should be doing pieces that say, I'm Ric Flair. I'm a 16-time wrestling champion. I've traveled all over the world. I've worked for World Wrestling Entertainment. I've worked for WCW. And now I'm with TNA Wrestling. I am TNA Wrestling. Go back to being We Are Wrestling. I introduce your stars, your talents, your people to the crowd. You can't assume they know who they are. It's a big piece of what they should be doing right now and something that WWE knows exactly how to do. And they did it with a clip last week on Raw that they showed again tonight, 2/21/11. That's how you build anticipation. That's how you make a star. That's how you tease and hype. This is the award-winning Pro Wrestling Report on 540 ESPN, streaming live at ESPNMilwaukee.com. Welcome back to the award-winning Pro Wrestling Report on 540 ESPN, streaming live at ESPNMilwaukee.com. Damian Nelson coming to you here from the 540 ESPN studios. Dave here on the Cause not joining us tonight. They're out doing a little WWE Raw after party. I'm sure with some of our great fans, some of you who are probably listening live right now. So hello, all of you out there. What a night. The Bradley Center, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. We're going to be talking about all the goings-on, including the return of Vince McMahon to Raw. We're going to be talking about all that Friday night on our television show, Primetime TV. It's going to be on Time Warner Cable. So be sure to check that out and be a part of it. Coming up in a few minutes, we're going to be sharing with you that interview that we conducted last week with Kevin Nash after his return to WWE and his return to the Royal Rumble and the Let's Go Diesel that was heard so prominently in that arena from Boston with Kevin Nash. It's a noteworthy interview, and it's one you certainly want to check out. That's going to take up our second hour right here tonight as an encore presentation. We've gotten some of your comments and feedback on the They reveal from TNA, and again, it seems to be fairly decent, and many of you saying that it was the way TNA should have gone. It made sense, and it actually seems to have worked out that they were forced into that situation. Whether they were or not, I think it's created some intrigue and some excitement to their product. And when we were talking about this before the break, I'm not knocking TNA. I'm simply offering a suggestion because in basic marketing, you got to know who you are, and you got to know who you're selling to, and you got to tell the people what they're buying. And I'm not sure that in all cases TNA takes advantage of the opportunity. I also found it interesting that last week on Impact, we went from the Bully Ray match to the Erase the Hate or whatever it was campaign promo. Timing's everything sometimes, and in that case, you saw what happened there. But anyways, WWE Raw at the Bradley Center tonight. They've invited Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers, the Super Bowl champions, to the Resch Center in Green Bay tomorrow night. We're going to be at that event as well. 2 big nights of WWE action. In case you don't know, In case you don't know, WWE going to be returning to the Chicago area on March 28th with Raw, and we talked earlier, Triple H advertised to be a part of that program, of that show, not necessarily part of the broadcast. And keep in mind, last time Triple H was part of a WWE event was a tribute to the troops, I believe, and during that event, that was also, an event where he and Shawn Michaels were used as DX, yet it didn't make air on TV. So let's not get too excited for the return of Triple H, because many of us thought that it was going to happen in the Royal Rumble anyways, and of course that did not come to fruition. So we'll see what happens on Raw from Chicago, and it's one of the, if not the, final Raw leading into WrestleMania 27 from Atlanta, Georgia. And as we said before, sweet and sexy. Many of you, fans from all over the country, have bought tickets to the Sweet and Sexy deal at WrestleMania, Sweet and Sexy ticket package. You can watch WrestleMania from a suite with all the rest of us from the Pro Wrestling Report broadcast team. You can do so by purchasing those tickets now. They are available at pwrshow.com. Just click on that image there that says Sweet and Sexy and be a part of WrestleMania 27. It's going to be a good event. And as I said before, as I've been saying since November, as I will say through my April 3rd, The Miz, the current WWE champion of the world, will still be champion going in to WrestleMania 27. And I do expect an apology from all of you who have doubted that. From the moment I said it, you've said I'm crazy. You said there's no way. Many of you said he's a transitional champion. You said he shouldn't be champion. He doesn't deserve it. He didn't pay his dues. He's obnoxious. He doesn't look like a champion. Blah, blah, yada, yada, yada. Sock in it. That's what you should do. Put a sock in it, because he's still champion. And the fact that you don't want him to be is what makes it that much greater that he is champion. Been saying it since November. You don't put that much gas behind a person. You don't put that much fuel in a tank of a star, as they've done to The Miz, with all the media appearances, with the notoriety that he has, with that WWE belt, if you don't have long-term plans for him. Whether I'm a huge fan of The Miz or not, doesn't matter. The writing's on the wall. He's going to be champion going into WrestleMania. Now, coming out of WrestleMania could be a very different story, especially not knowing how WrestleMania is going to shape up yet, but we'll see what happens in that regard. Over on the SmackDown side of things, we know we've got Alberto Del Rio and Edge. Now, I gotta tell you, firstly, and I may have missed it if there was one announced tonight, but there's some big names coming into the Hall of Fame this year. That's all I'm going to say about that. Second, I think you better stay very closely glued to your television screens on Raw and SmackDown over the next few weeks, because I think you might be very happy with what you see. That's all I'm saying about that. And keep in mind, I think that WWE Raw has been a stellar program all year, with the exception of maybe 1 week. I think SmackDown's been a great program all year. I don't think there's been many missteps at all as it pertains to those two programs from WWE. Now, Superstars has become a bit of a not need to watch. It certainly isn't must-see TV. But good programming so far from WWE on both fronts. And, generally around this time of year, business picks up. Things get a bit more interesting. It's WrestleMania season. It's March Madness. People are in a sports world. They're in a mindset for sports. And it's going to be exciting going into Atlanta on the road to WrestleMania. WWE, they've already got the Elimination Chamber set. And keep in mind, the Elimination Chamber is in 2 weeks now. And we've got all kinds of time between then and WrestleMania, to build all kinds of stuff. You got something happening on February 21st. You got some more announcements for Hall of Fame inductees, because it won't just be Shawn Michaels, obviously. You got Booker T over on SmackDown. What's next for Kevin Nash? His unfinished business with the Big Show from the Royal Rumble. There's a lot of intrigue built over on the WWE side of things for the WrestleMania, the road to WrestleMania coming up. I want to thank all of you for your submissions of the Versus segment. For the Versus segment, tonight's winner comes from a user on Twitter by the name of the fake Ryan MCD. Looks like that's what it says. The fake Ryan MCD, who wanted to see a matchup between CM Punk and Eddie Guerrero. CM Punk and Eddie Guerrero tonight's Versus. That would be fun. And I don't know if people really have a full appreciation for just how brilliant CM Punk is. Brilliant. He is absolutely tremendous. Eddie Guerrero, tremendous. Brilliant as well. This would be a psychological nail-biter. And these two men would put on a great wrestling contest, but they put on a contest in which either man could win. They put on a contest in which either man could have that opportunity, could have that chance. That would be a fun Versus. That would be very fun to watch. Obviously, that chance won't present itself, but what will present itself is the Pro Wrestling Report returning to the radio airwaves next Monday night. Next Monday night, all three of us are going to be back in the studio for the first time in a couple of weeks. Next Monday night, live on 540 ESPN and streaming here at ESPNMilwaukee.com. I want to thank all of you again for your support in the Wrestling Radio Awards as the Pro Wrestling Report wins for Media Interview of the Year, and I very, very humbly accepting the award of Wrestling Radio Host of the Year. We are going to give you the opportunity now to listen to what is our most downloaded interview of the year so far. The month into it that we are. Kevin Nash is going to join us again coming up in the second hour of the Pro Wrestling Report Radio here. Thank you for joining us here live on 540 ESPN. We'll see you all tomorrow in Green Bay. PWR is going to be up, part of the celebration, and then moving over to SmackDown, where the Packers may be in attendance. We'll see the rest of you Friday night on PWR Primetime TV. For David Hero and the Cause, this is Damian Nelson saying thanks for tuning in to the Pro Wrestling Report on 540 ESPN. Hour 2 starts right after Sports Center.
Welcome back to the Pro Wrestling Report, 540 ESPN, ESPNMilwaukee.com, along with the Hall of Famer David Hero on the Cause. Joining us now, special guest of the Time Warner Cable phone line. He was with WWF, he was with TNA and WCW. And now he's sort of kind of back with WWE. You know him as Diesel. It's Kevin Nash. Kevin, good evening.
What's up, guys?
Hey, Kev, how are you doing?
Good, man.
What a great night last night.
Yeah, it was beyond expectations.
I mean, for the past few days, it was all over the internet. Kevin Nash, Booker T, Kevin Nash on their way to Boston. The wrestling paparazzi even tracks you down at Boston Airport with the video cameras, and they're going out there to try to get the big scoop and the hot news, and there you were. What was that like? I mean, from what I hear, there was as many people at the airport waiting for you as some other house shows around town.
Yeah, I mean it's such a different world. I mean just even last night I put my bag in talent relations when I got there. I ran around, had to do some things with had some pictures taken and had to talk to the THQ video people and different things, and it's like to be in an arena again, especially one that size, like, I couldn't find my bag. I was like, does anybody know where talent relations is? But yeah, it's a different world.
When you got to Boston and you got to the building and you walked in, you walked in the back, and obviously there's completely new faces since you were there last. What about 8 years ago? Correct.
Right.
What was that like? I mean, the guys like Undertaker, you know, he wasn't there, obviously. Shawn Michaels wasn't there. I'm sure Triple H was there, but the group that you were with is pretty much gone.
Yeah.
And now it's all, you know, I mean, you don't want to call them young kids, but, you know, when they're next to you in the ring, they're young kids.
Well, I mean, John was there. Cena was there when I was there last time, and Orton, and of course, like, you know, Glenn was there. I mean, just to know to have Book there was just huge, because, you know, Book and I have been together the last couple of years wrestling. So I mean, it was like, you know, at least it was almost like when Scott and I jumped to WCW together. It's like, it's one thing to jump by yourself. It's always great, you know, to have that one guy to kind of, you know, for no other reason, just, you know, streetwise, just to have your back. It was just nice to have Book there with me.
You're listening to Kevin Nash here on the Pro Wrestling Report, 540 ESPN, ESPNMilwaukee.com. Kevin, you walk through the curtain and you hear the crowd erupt. What was that like?
Me and Book had a couple of cocktails after the night was over, and Book said, you know, when he went out, he said, I heard that crowd reaction. He said, I almost turned around to see if somebody was behind me. You know, it's just, you know, the thing is, it's just when you, and it's nothing against, you know, TNA is what it is. It's a, you know, 800 people or 1,000 people, whatever it is in that studio. And I mean, you know, it's been so long since I've walked. I mean, the last time I walked out for that many people was the Tokyo Dome, and, you know, that was 2 years ago at the 20th anniversary show. But it's, you know, the Japanese crowd is so different than the U.S. crowd. So it was, you know, I just took my time. I just sat there and savored it, and I said, man, this is nice. This is very nice. So it was definitely. I was talking to Joey Styles after the match, and I said, Joe, when I you know, beat Bob Backlund at the Garden, I said it was a special moment in my life, and probably one of the biggest highlights of my wrestling career. I said, but, you know, it was so young in my run, I really didn't appreciate what, you know, like what it was, and you know, they brought me back out to the Garden, like, after, because I think we worked like maybe fourth that night, and they brought me back out later on in the night, and I got another ovation, and I mean, it was special. But it's, you know, when you know that you've got so much, you know, more behind than you do in front of you in your career, and you go out there and you get that kind. I mean, I couldn't thank the people from Boston, you know, enough, you know, for that response, and you know, for the people that were on Twitter, that, you know, my wife told me at one point I was like the number one trending top, you know, for like, you know, a half hour. I mean, those are the things that when you look back at it, you say, you know, I guess these 30 operations were worth it, because there are people out there that, you know, even though I have the moniker Big Lazy, I guess occasionally I must have got off my ass and done something.
What do you think is, I mean, when there's that "Let's Go Diesel" chant, it was shaking. I mean, I wasn't there live. I was watching it on pay-per-view, but you could just hear the building shake. You got to wonder what's going through the minds of the people in Nashville, Tennessee, when a guy that, you know, they weren't too sure what they wanted to do with gets the biggest reaction on one of the biggest WWE pay-per-views of the year.
I'm sure that they realized that they were right, that they shouldn't have signed me after, you know, the October pay-per-view. They should have tried to cut my pay, and I mean, I think they were dead on. I think that mindset is proven to be effective, and you know, I think to them it solidifies that they're on top of their game. Yeah,
exactly. That's exactly what I was thinking. And from what I heard is that this week's TNA TVs, they've been rewriting it rather quickly, because obviously they had hoped that you and Booker would have showed up to be a part of the Mafia with Kurt Angle, and they are grasping at straws right now to try to fill those two holes.
Talk.
There's a couple of guys out there that work for free.
You know what? I do believe Gilbert is available.
Yeah.
And I should probably, shoot them,
You can make that happen,
yeah,
can't you?
Exactly.
Kevin.
I've come to the conclusion that I don't think you should ever sign a contract in professional wrestling that pays you less than your Social Security does a month when you're 65. I don't know.
Did you have an opportunity to see Vince Lynn last night or no?
To see who?
Vince.
Absolutely.
And what was that conversation like?
If I could just give you a capsule, number one, this is like the difference between everything. They flew me out of Daytona Beach because it's a pricier ticket, but it's just more convenient for me. Whereas I would have flown out of Orlando had it been, TNA. So instead of driving, 90 miles, I drove 12.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect flight, get in, and they want to. I'm staying on the actual Boston airport property, and they're going to send a car to take me basically 11 feet. And I'm like, I can take the Hyatt shuttle.
You can fall out of bed and be there.
I can take the Hyatt shuttle 11 feet. And I get there, and you got the best room in the hotel, Mr. Nash. I get there, I go to my room, and I open the blinds, and here's across the harbor is, on the right-hand side is the Fleet Center,
mm-hmm.
and then the whole, Boston skyline. I go downstairs, I have a great dinner, nice bottle of wine, come upstairs, and it's just like I get, every hour I get a text finally. It's like, this is your driver. This is the driver comes and gets me. It's like a CIA movie. I go up the back ramp of the garden. It's like coordinated. There's not even a stop. Like we're halfway up and the gate's going up. I pull in. There's Johnny Ace and Jimmy. That's a security guy, and shoot me in, get my paperwork signed, get me to the doctor for a full physical. And then it's, they took me in to see, I wanted to see Paul, so I got to go in and see, spend about a half hour with Paul. Then they shot me out of there, and I had to go, do pictures and video and a couple other things, some of the products that they wanted to get, up and going. And then, from there, I talked to Vince. From there, I got Stephanie. I got a chance to see Steph, and then Steph, Paul, and I spent some time together. And then it was Paul kind of gave me a rundown of what we were doing, and in the Rumble, and I just said I just think it's going to be too much heat if I go over, and he said, well, we'll change it.
Yeah, the Miz couldn't handle Kevin Nash coming after him. That's for damn sure.
So no, he told me what we're doing, and and then I went and I just got and Paul and I he said, have you been down the ring yet? And I said, no. So we went down the ring. I see Mike Rotunda, and people don't remember this, but would never know this, but I remember my first road run ever in the WCW days, NWA days. Mike Rotunda was working with me, and he was, my partner left. He was horrible, and I remember Mike Rotunda met me at Center Stage, the first, I think it was a Tuesday. He said, can you get there at 11 o'clock? I'm like, yeah. And Mike Rotunda sat there in the ring and let me drop elbows on him for 2 hours.
Mm.
Just to, so it's just so you see a guy like that, and he's, and it's just you don't forget guys like that in your career. And Arn, saw Arn. It was great to see Arn. We laughed, and I got to see Glenn Jacobs Kane that I've known for 100 years, and I got to see Pat Patterson, and then I got a chance to. It was funny because I tapped Wade. Wade was on the. I said, you got a tweeting about me? Tweeting about me, haven't you? He just looked at me like, what?
Well, and it's funny that you mentioned that, because about a month or so ago, there was a video where you and X-Pac were doing like a shoot video about Wade Barrett.
Yeah.
And then, to see you two guys actually in the ring, like all came full circle.
Well, like I've always said, if you're not smart enough to watch the opposition program and see that the one kid, Miz, has got the belt, and the other kid is the head heel in charge of the hottest faction on the other television. Mm-hmm. It's like, if you're not trying to get into some kind of angle with them somehow, you're not very smart. Because if you go into the organization and you've already got kind of a built-in storyline, you sure don't want to be doing it with the bottom guy.
Absolutely. Well, and when you say Wade Barrett, when you walked in the locker room, what did some of those younger guys, what was their reaction like? Here comes Kevin Nash. Obviously, there's a reputation that, precedes you when you walk into a locker room. And were they surprised? Were they shocked? Were they concerned?
I don't think so. I think it's, I think it's one of those deals like anything else. And I think that my reputation is one thing. I think if you spend 3 minutes with me, you realize that it's mostly bull.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Like me and Egg, I got a chance. I haven't seen Edge in a while. It's like we're all wrestlers. That's what we do, and we're all trying to get each other over and trying to make the product the best we can, no matter what organization we're with. And it's, I don't ever I don't care what somebody says about somebody else until I meet them and sit down with them. Like, there's a lot of people that really had a problem with Goldberg, but when it was just Bill and I one-on-one, it was, with Bill and I he was a sweetheart and always was to me, and always, I wouldn't have anything, was Bill difficult wrestling-wise? Maybe. As a human being, no, he was perfect.
Well, Kevin, if you can hold on, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, what might the next 60 days be like for Diesel?
At least the next 62 days. 62
days. We'll find that out. We're broadcasting live from the Time Warner Cable Studios in downtown Milwaukee. You're listening to the Pro Wrestling Report, 540 ESPN, ESPNMilwaukee.com. Welcome back to the Pro Wrestling Report, 540 ESPN, ESPNMilwaukee.com. Special guest on the line, Diesel, Kevin Nash, who had probably an exciting evening last night. And, Kev, after, hopefully you're on with us, Kev. You still there?
Yeah.
Good. Just making sure we have full vote of lines here. Talk a little bit about, you're done with your match last night. Obviously, crowd erupted. You shared maybe a beverage, and you thought, now what's next? So what could be in the works, or I guess what's your best case scenario here for the next few days, a few weeks?
I don't know. We're going to talk on Wednesday. I'm going to definitely sign. There's they basically call like a Legends contract. It's where I'll be kind of a worst case scenario an ambassador, and it's a licensing and merchandising agreement. I'll work with the videos and
action figures, T-shirts, video games,
all that. Yeah, so basically I'll be doing that. We had Jennifer Hudson there last night. She was backstage.
Nice.
Her husband was wrestling. This is the key, okay? It's like 9:45, and if you go to craft services, and there's not fake imitation, but they still have actual lobster rolls. I'm talking like 8 ounces of lobster. In these
well, you're in the Boston area, so they better have good lobster there.
I mean, you can get a New York strip. You can. I mean, it's just like Well, I pulled up, like all the guys now travel in buses. All the top guys travel in buses now. I pulled up. I said, "What is the Royal Rumble going on, or the Eagles here?"
You got to see Glenn Fry and.
Yeah, exactly. I just hope that we're going to play "The Heat Is On" because I don't believe.
Isn't that your theme song anyhow?
Something from Nick Nickelback.
How nice are those buses? I mean, I've seen them, and I heard that Hunter has one, and Big Show, and Edge, and Cena. Were you able to get inside one of those and check them out?
Well, I was in Hunter's bus, like 3 years ago when he first got his, and they came to Daytona Beach, and I got a chance to, and I've been on, but Hunter's was the fit and finish was nicer than any house I've lived in. So, but no, I mean it's just these guys have. I mean that's how much that company has evolved. It used to be if you had 3 guys in a Cadillac, you were pimping. And now it's if you got a 40-footer, you're kind of slumming. You need the 48 with the slide out.
But you mentioned about how it's evolved, and now like how Vince has his own film division, and your good close personal friend Triple H has this new movie coming out, The Chaperone, I believe. I'm not too sure if you've seen that one or not yet.
I haven't.
It's coming out in a couple of weeks. With this new Legends deal, could that open the door for some more movies for you? I mean, I know that you're going to be Thor's father in a Thor movie coming out as well.
Well, I mean, the opportunities are with that kind of a corporation are just so limitless, and I mean, it's from a production standpoint, I mean, the machine. I remember a long time ago when we had the opportunity to battle them at WCW and come ahead for a little while against Vince's program, and I told Bischoff, I said, it was finally they took back over, and it was like that WrestleMania when Tyson.
Yeah.
Came, and each match had like a movie trailer quality, clip that like set up the match, because Vince knew that not everybody was watching the show, but he knew that he could put together a 3 or 4 minute clip to basically tie each match that night was like epic because of the production quality of Dunn and Kerwin. So it's like, you look at that, and I remember Sullivan the next day Kevin Sullivan come in, he goes, "Brother, did you see WrestleMania?" He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "I put my hand in the water. It felt cold. Titanic's going to hit the iceberg pretty soon." He wasn't far off. I mean, it was just, it was a matter of time. But, when finally everything kind of imploded and, AOL took over and they started selling everything off and they started cutting Eric's budget and everything else. And I told Eric, he was sitting there one day, he was really down. I told him, I said, "Eric," I said, "one of these days," I said, "you're going to go to work for the WWE." I said, "You're going to walk into that tower and you're going to walk into that production studio and you're going to look at what it's like, dude, you have no idea the machine that they have."
Mm-hmm.
And I hadn't been there for a while. I remember when I went back in 2003, and they were just like, they had the London office, St. Paulo office, da-da-da-da-da-da. And now it's been another 8 years I come back, and it's, it's like light years. I mean, that company it's amazing. It's just, you watch where wrestling is, the progression of wrestling. And I know right now that a lot of people, and it is one of those things where you don't know a lot of the guys, but I remember in 92, 93, I remember when Shawn Michaels and Scott Hall, myself, and a couple other guys, like there was this mass exodus where Hogan and Macho and DiBiase and everybody left, and all the guys took the Lloyds of London money. We lost Rude and all those guys took off, with injuries, and it was just like we sat in the locker room and we were like, "We don't have any stars." And Pat Patterson, "What do you mean? You guys are the stars." And we went like, "Yeah, you're right." And then that's just during that transition process right now of building new stars. So, if I can help do that, then that's great. People always say, do you think you have one more run in you or whatever? And you try to answer people, like with a legitimate answer, but the bottom line is, if somebody asks you, do you have another run in you, it's just like, I don't know, ask the booking department.
Right.
Absolutely.
Ask them. They're the ones that inevitably tell you whether you have a run or not. So I mean, if I have a run, if they saw something in me last night and they think that they can make some money, or I can elevate somebody, or they can team me with somebody, or put me in a faction, or I can manage somebody. I mean, I'm wide open to anything.
Well, they actually saw it and they heard it. I mean, it was loud. But Kevin, you mentioned about making stars, and one of the biggest problems in TNA over the past several years is they really haven't made any of their own stars bigger than who they've brought in, from the E. How can they change that? I mean, what can they do to turn that company around? I mean, they've obviously, they bring in Hogan, they bring in Flair. There's now rumors that Flair may be leaving the company because of what happened overseas. They bring in Matt Hardy, Jeff Hardy.
Well, I would number one. I think that I don't know. I guess it's just a difference of being the way you're brought up in the business. But if somebody told me that Rick didn't have a credit card, didn't have any cash on him, and he was going to get stuck, and he wasn't getting on the bus, and they were just going to leave him, and everybody, in conjunction basically says, yeah, we should leave him, I'd be like, whoa, wait a minute, that's Ric Flair. Like, excuse me, can I get my bags off the bus? I got a credit card. Me and Rick will get a train. Like, you don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
You're supposed to be a team. People, I don't care if somebody's having a bad day or whatever. You don't leave somebody. You don't leave somebody stranded someplace. I know some of the management was staying in a different hotel that was $1,500 a night, and there's a lot of shopping going on. Sometimes things get misconstrued, but you just don't leave a guy like that. You don't leave Ric Flair anywhere. That's just Ric Flair. I don't care what he's done, what he said, who he's ticked off. He's earned the right to. You make sure Ric Flair gets to where he needs to be. You want to punish him, you do that, but you don't punish him by leaving him stranded in the middle of Europe.
Gotcha. And then when you left TNA, they went in a different direction with Jeff Hardy. You and Sting took some time off. Now on Raw tonight, and I don't know if you watched Raw or not yet. They did a promo where on 2/21/11, they showed a guy in a rainstorm. Well, they didn't show his face. In a long black trench coat, walking into like an empty haunted house kind of thing.
Yeah.
Would you be surprised if Sting were to show up and maybe had a match with the Undertaker at WrestleMania this year?
Well, if the option was there, he'd be a damn fool not to.
I think WrestleMania needs a Kevin Nash or Diesel at WrestleMania. I think a Sting versus Undertaker would make things very interesting. Obviously Sting's never been in the company before, and I think that's what Taker would need. And it's almost like another invasion. You know what I'm saying? Whereas now three of the bigger veteran stars, yourself, Booker T, Sting.
That's three of the main event mafia.
Exactly. All you're missing is Papa Pump and Kurt Angle.
I think Kurt's up in August. I don't think it'd take too many Scotty Steiner explosions to get him thrown out of there. So.
Kevin, if we could keep you on for one more segment, there's just a couple other questions that we want to just kind of tie the loose ends if we could.
Absolutely.
Great, we appreciate it. You're listening to the Pro Wrestling Report, 540 ESPN, ESPNMilwaukee.com.
540 ESPN.
This is a sponsored message brought to you by Tour Books. The most ancient of human questions sparks a clash between scientists and fundamentalists in a riveting thriller. I'm Diana Page Jordan. In Blasphemy, Douglas Preston tells the story of a team of scientists on a Navajo Indian reservation who turn on a super collider and make an amazing discovery, which they try to keep secret.
My novel begins with my character, Wyman Ford, who is sent out there by the government to find out what's gone wrong and what these scientists seem to be hiding.
The true-to-life super collider is called Isabella.
Here is a machine that is actually recreating the energy density of the Big Bang.
In Blasphemy, an army of fundamentalists stages a bloody battle over Isabella.
The clash we see now, the creationist versus evolutionist debate, is really, I think, only the beginning.
Preston says he's deeply fearful of people who insist they know the truth.
Novel means new, and the best thing a novel can do, I think, is introduce you to ideas that may not have occurred to you before.
Blasphemy by Douglas Preston. This is a sponsored message brought to you by Tor Books.
Hello, I'm your eyes.
And I'm your nose, with something very important to discuss with you this allergy season.
That's right. Nels and I, we both suffer from seasonal allergy symptoms, so we want to be treated together.
That's why we want you to ask our doctor about Veramist nasal spray. Prescription Veramist, fluticasone furoate, is one medicine that's FDA approved to treat both seasonal nasal
and seasonal eye symptoms in patients 12 and older.
Veramist treats me when I'm runny, stuffy, itchy, and sneezing.
Plus, treats my watery, itchy red eyes. Veramist is one medicine approved to treat all that.
For best results, use once daily. Side effects may include nosebleed, nasal sores, or nasal fungal infection. Eye problems, including glaucoma or cataracts, may occur, so have regular eye exams. Results may vary. Maximum benefit may take several days. Don't spray in eyes.
Talent knows.
All together now,
Veramist for our seasonal nasal and eye allergy symptoms.
One for all.
To learn more, talk to your doctor. See our ad in health. Call 8669-VERAMIST or visit veramist.com.
Miller Lite and 540 ESPN are teaming up to give you a super party at your house. We have 4 great parties to give away, and each party will include plenty of Miller Lite, food provided by Noodles & Company, and a $200 gift card to the Packer Pro Shop, compliments of Miller Lite. If that's not enough, one grand prize winner will receive a 50-inch Samsung Plasma HD TV for the big game, courtesy of Texteriors. You'll have 4 chances to come out on Thursday and register to win at 3:30 at Discount Liquors of Waukesha or Gary's Beer of Oak Creek, and at 6 o'clock at Otto's Wine Cask in Brown Deer or Woodman's in Kenosha. For details on the locations and contest rules, visit ESPNMilwaukee.com. Who doesn't want to win a super party for 20 at your house with Miller Lite, food from Noodles, a $200 Packer Pro Shop gift card, and a chance for a 50-inch plasma TV from Texteriors? Come see us this Thursday for your chance to win with Miller Lite at 540 ESPN. Miller Lite, taste greatness.
We Energies, proud supporter of the Admirals, Brewers, Bucks, and Packers, brings you today's Power Replay.
Talking to William Henderson here on the D-List. I would think that a Super Bowl victory for you or anyone else would stay with you, obviously, for the rest of your life. But in some ways, a Super Bowl loss might linger just as much or more if you can't let it go. Is it hard to let that go?
For the next 365 days, you're reminded of it. Every time that Time Life book commercial would come on and you start hearing that music, knowing that they're not talking about you in a positive way. You didn't do it. It's difficult to deal with. It gnaws at you. You can't wait for another opportunity to redeem yourself. For me, losing the second one, it was so much more validating for how wonderful it was to have that early success in my career of going to a Super Bowl and winning one. As great as it is to have an AFC or NFC championship ring, it's so much more rewarding to have that Super Bowl ring.
We Energies, energy you can depend on.
Get the latest fantasy information during Fantasy Sports Weekly, Saturday mornings at 9 on 540 ESPN.
Welcome back to the Pro Wrestling Report, 540 ESPN, ESPNMilwaukee.com. Again, special guest in the Time Warner Cable phone line. Kevin Nash was Diesel from last night. Kevin, appreciate you sticking around with us.
Sure.
Does that music take you back a little bit, Kevin?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a couple versions of that, and I didn't know which one they were going to play, but I didn't know because there was one that didn't later on in my career that didn't have the truck.
Mm-hmm. Well, I believe that last one was the Vinny Vegas theme.
Yeah, I mean, I know that one.
Gotcha. Mm-hmm.
There's just a couple of questions we want to make sure that we get to, and one of them was after the match was ending, as you were, at least your part of the match, and you were walking up the ramp, you kind of gave a look to the big show. Can you talk a little bit about what that was about?
Well, I mean, he and I have I think we've probably been across the ring as rivals almost as many times as we've been side by side. So, you know, kind of like that big guy thing. You know, he was looking sideways at me. I was just walking. I just caught him looking at me, so I looked at him, and then, I mean, I didn't know. I'm not going to let him sucker punch me 9, so I took back and looked again. So,
if you could pick one guy in either the Raw or the SmackDown roster, and you know for WrestleMania coming up in Atlanta, who would you want to work with?
Who would I want to work with? Jeez.
Threw a curveball there.
I mean, in a perfect world, Taker. I mean, you know, of course.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Show Kane.
I'd rather see
I would like to work. I would work Wade. I'd like to work Wade.
Yeah,
that could be an outstanding match.
There's definitely a good backstory there. I mean, for me personally, I'd rather you just jackknife powerbomb Miz and just take that title from him. You know, in a perfect world, that'd be great for me. But,
well, I mean, I would. You know, I think that because I've been saving that one. You know, like the 450 moon bomb and I've been saving all those things. I guess if it was maybe put my career on the line that night, I might be able to frog splash and do the trash can and jump off from the other corner with the double drop kick in. I mean, I've got those things in my arsenal. I just haven't used them.
You're saving it.
You know what? And that reminds me. Were there any rock stars in the locker room on Sunday night?
I mean, Morrison.
No. I mean,
Jim Morrison.
Yeah. I mean, there was an interview by a TNA star who said there were 2 rock stars, in the TNA locker room. Just kind of curious if you thought that there were more rock stars in the Royal Rumble locker room.
Oh, those kind of rock stars.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, collectively, the rock stars at TNA seem to be drawn about 600. The collective band at WWE seems to be, that must have been close to 24,000 people. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think I'm going to stick with the Roger Waters tour.
There you go.
Well, and then also, there's some people that have Kevin Nash coming to their town for some independent appearances and bookings and whatnot. And obviously, with you being in the Royal Rumble, you told me earlier that they can all breathe easy, that you can still, regardless, when you sign your contract with the E as an ambassador, that you'll still be able to honor those other commitments, correct?
Yeah, I talked to Johnny, and he said that, that those things, because they were pre-existing, I'd be able to, to honor all those. I mean, that was, I thought that was great, because I've got some movie things, and I think that, I really don't have anything like pertinent going into Mania, so I mean I could make that run. And I told anybody that wanted to listen. I mean, like I told them, I said I'll work and I'll go as long. I mean, I said I just I can't work a full schedule. I'm not stupid enough to think I can. That little bit I did last night was the first thing I've done in 3 months. And I woke up this morning and I could feel that my body was banged up a little bit. I mean, once I took a hot shower, I was fine, but I woke up stiff. So it's just, I'm not stupid. I mean, the perfect situation for me is I look at me and Show had would just say, hey, big guy, how about the 2 biggest guys in the territory get side by side? And bump somebody around and not bump.
Those are the best kind of matches, aren't they?
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. There's nothing better than throwing a guy back and forth to 2 big 7-foot guys.
Well, and then, of course, Kevin Nash will be in LaSalle, Illinois on Saturday for Dreamwave Wrestling. If you go to dreamwavewrestling.com, you'll be there. It'll be an internet pay-per-view as well. So I'll be heading down there with the great Khali, and we'll be checking that out. And
I'll be seeing you then.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we're looking forward to that. Cal actually pulled your number in the Royal Rumble pool yesterday and was very excited.
Very excited.
but was a little frustrated when he didn't win the money. So.
I'm sorry, Cal. I'll make it up to him.
Sounds good. Sounds very good.
We got about a minute left, and we got to ask you. We're obviously on a 540 ESPN station here. You got a pick for the Sunday Super Bowl?
I mean, if I had to, if somebody gave me $10,000 and said you had to pick, no point spread, no nothing, you had to pick a team, I'd say not a chance. I really thought Atlanta would beat Green Bay in Atlanta because when they just destroyed them, I'm afraid of Green Bay in that dome. Their offense is, Rodgers, I think, what is he, 8-1 or 10-2?
Yeah.
I mean, he's like unbelievable in indoors. And at the same time, it's like Roethlisberger. I mean, I watched him for the last I watched the defense of the Jets. Arm tackle Brady and arm tackle Peyton Manning. Then I saw 5 of them hanging on Ben, and Ben getting out of the pocket and making the passes. So it's I just know that finally, number one, I'm going to be watching 2 teams. I can't take the Panthers and the Jaguars and these Tennessee Titans. I can't take it. It looks like I'm watching a USFL game
or XFL game.
Steelers. It's the Steelers versus the Packers. It's like this is a real Super Bowl. I think it's going to be a hell of a game. And I got a ton of friends up in Pittsburgh, and I got a ton of friends. Dave and everybody else up there. It's just like it's one of those games to me where I don't lose no matter who wins.
Right.
There you go.
Because I know it's going to be great. It's old school football. Green Bay's found their running game. Mendenhall's found. I mean, both teams have the ability to run. Both teams have great defenses. Both teams can go 20 plus yards. It's not going to be that 3-yard dump off crap that. I mean, it's going to be in a. I mean,
it's going to be a game finally.
Yeah. And I mean, anybody that's got hair that looks like Big Sexy wears a helmet. And I'm not talking about hockey either. I'm talking about my boy.
52.
Clay Matthews.
You got it. I mean, he's my favorite. He's my favorite player in the league. So.
Well, and Kevin Green is our linebackers coach as well.
Yeah.
See?
There you go.
Yeah. Wait, I wrestled him. He beat us.
Yeah.
Charlotte. Grab the tights.
There you go. Kevin, we appreciate your time this evening.
Can I say something, one last thing?
Sure. Go ahead.
I gave TNA a hard time tonight. I'm just kidding around, but I mean, I had 4 good years with those guys. I have nothing but respect for them. I wish them all, all the success in the world, and I just hope that they're as happy for what happened. I mean, and there are a lot of guys tonight that today that sent me texts and stuff that meant the world to me. That I know they're my true friends that said, we were so happy for you last night. And I wish my buddies down there, continued success. I would love to get in a battle again someday where there was a war, and that those numbers got closer because they were good to me.
Mm-hmm.
Dixie was good to me. Everybody was good to me. It's just that there were some underlying situations that came up financially that were out of Dixie's hands that kind of put her in a bad situation, and it kind of hurt our relationship a little bit. But I mean, I got the utmost respect for her. I got the utmost respect for that company. I had a good time. I got a lot of friends down there, and I wish them all the best. And adios, amigos.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that was Kevin Nash here on the Pro Wrestling Report just last week. Frank and Dave conducting that interview. Kevin, of course, with his thoughts on how the Super Bowl would go and filling in a lot of the blanks as to what was going on with him in TNA Wrestling. Joining us later that hour was Shane Helms, and you can catch that interview right now at pwrshow.com in the archive section, actually. It's getting late. Want to thank all of you for joining us. Want to thank Kevin Nash for being our guest so many times here on this program. and really just being real and keeping it honest and sharing information with all of you out there in the listening audience. I want to remind all of you as well that we are going to be live again next Monday night right here on 540 ESPN with another brand new episode from the Pro Wrestling Report, so be sure to check it out. We'll be in the studio, all three of us, again together for that show. So, with that being said, we will see you Friday for PWR Primetime TV. And then again, next Monday night, right here on 540 ESPN and ESPNMilwaukee.com for the Cause and David Hero. This is Damian Nelson, the host of the year, saying thank you for tuning in.